Hello and welcome to the Farming Today podcast with me, Charlotte Smith. In this episode, calls to reject recommendations to end vet training at Cambridge University.
I was initially very disappointed, and I felt that the decision had been taken on really quite flaky grounds.
More on that later. Let's start, though, on a farm in Northern Ireland. It's run by Iain Colville, who also works as a barrister in London. This surely unique combination of jobs sounds unlikely, even unwise. But as Kathleen Carragher discovered when she met Iain at Glenside Farm, where he lives and works with his family, the legal farmer is making it work.
We're looking at this year's crop of lambs. You'll see amongst them pedigree blue Texel lambs and crossbreds. We have a number of crossbred sheep, just commercial sheep, and we would use the blue Texel ram for both pedigree and the commercials. The commercial lambs would all go to the market. Some of the pedigree ones, which are good for breeding, we'd keep. So the females would keep for replacements, and the good rams we would then sell for breeding. When we were growing up, my father's a farmer and my mother is a teacher, and I swore blind I would never be a teacher because I saw my mum teaching and didn't fancy that, and I swore blind I would never farm because I spent my days when I wasn't at school out on the farm and I absolutely hated it. So I swore blind I'd never do it, so I went over to England and studied law and qualified and trained barrister over in London. And then in 2014, I used to help Dad sort of on remotely, and then in 2014 we started buying cattle, and here we are now, and I asked myself why.
It's such a contrast being a barrister in London, working on appeals and housing work, and being a farmer in County Down.
Indeed, yes. And my solicitors who instruct me would know that I have a farm and I breed animals, and they would generally ask me how's it going. And as colleagues, I've got cameras up and I can watch them when I'm in London. So I've had it where cows are calving while I see on the camera, so phoning up the vet to tell the vet, but needing them phoning up another local farmer to help them calving. We sit and watch it, and people say, "Gosh, this is like Clarkson's farm." I says, "Nothing like Clarkson's farm. You might find that it doesn't end as well, but they've always enjoyed watching the cameras."
And when you're in court, do you wear the whole garb, the wig?
I do. I wear the wig and gown. Sometimes I look down and think, I should have washed my fingernails a bit harder, or if I'm sitting near a radiator, I can smell a bit of silage. But anyway, by and large, yes, it works. We managed to be able to kept the plates spinning.
Iain Colville. You can hear more from Glenside Farm near Belfast on Your Farm. That's here on BBC Radio 4 on Sunday morning at 6:30. Now, to one of my favourite subjects, cheese. It's our theme this week, from production through to exports. James Grant is the founder of the Real Cheese Project. It supports independent cheesemakers and works with dairy farmers across the UK and Ireland. The company sells cheese boxes, and James also runs online cheese webinar sessions to champion small-scale producers. He told me why.
Somebody that's producing food, I believe, is in the interest to understand where everything is coming from. What I'm saying is connection. If it's that close to making your own cheese from your own land, then you can also talk a bigger story as well. The terroir, the relationship with the land, how that influences the flavour of your cheese. I sell seasonal cheese as well. Every point of the year, the cheese is going to be somewhat different, and it's going to be very reflective of what that soil, what the grasses are saying at that point of the year.
We're very used to using that word when we're talking about wine. Is that more about marketing, or does it reflect something that's really happening?
It's definitely really happening. If I taste Slow Grown Farms Graffham Down cheese, for example, at a certain point of the year, I'll know that this is a winter make or this is a spring make.
What do you hope the Real Cheese Project will change?
So my project is educational, and it's a monthly project where I send a cheese to my client base with 2 condiments from small producers, and those producers then join me on a webinar where we discuss the cheese, why it's brilliant, what it's doing brilliant for the world. I also work with the comedian Marcus Brigstock, who also champions the People's Cheese Award, which is to help a smaller producer with a brand new cheese and put them up there to be seen and for people to experience why this cheese is so brilliant.
A lot of people were doing this during lockdown. That's how my own cheese habit started, by tasting cheeses I'd never even heard of during lockdown. Why are you still doing it that way when actually most of us have gone back to sort of like this, face-to-face meeting?
Because it's lots of fun. I can involve hundreds of people all at the same time. We also work with the Academy of Cheese as well, so we have a descriptive way of tasting cheese, so people are learning that at the same time. So we're really talking about slow food, we're talking about education, we're allowing people to understand a lot more about where real cheese comes from.
What you're doing represents a very small bit of cheese produced in the country. Are you hopeful that actually that can grow so that people like myself who shop in supermarkets and are in a hurry can get hold of it?
Absolutely. I was talking to a very large supermarket cheese buyer recently, and he's very interested in putting the Real Cheese Project in certain branches to highlight really good cheese in that area, and for me to curate a box of cheese with the tasting at the same time to educate more people about cheese and get them into real cheese again.
Most of us think of cheese as something that doesn't really change. You know, we eat the cheddars and the Leicesters and the Gloucestershires that we grow up with. Are there more cheeses being developed now?
There's so many new cheeses. I've got a lovely cheese called Brinkworth Blue from Kerry Cryer down in Wiltshire, which is off the scales as Wiltshire loaf. That was a very, very old recipe that's being reinvented and brought back to market.
I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favourite cheese?
Oh my God, that's so unfair. I love every cheese. I suppose Kirkham's Lancashire. On my stag night at St John restaurant many years ago, finished with Eccles cakes, lump of Lancashire cheese, bangs it in my mouth. I don't remember anything else about my stag night, but that was the most absolutely epic cheese I'd ever eaten in my life. So I love Lancashire cheese. It's comfort food. When my kids annoy me, I go in the room and I eat my cheese. That's it.
Cheesemonger James Grant there. Students and staff are campaigning against recommendations to end vet training at the University of Cambridge. The recommendation comes from the School of Biological Sciences. It says there's no viable future for undergraduate vet courses at the university. Rudy Bronyard is co-president of the Cambridge University Veterinary Society and a fifth-year student who'll graduate next year.
So we're all quite concerned that this has been raised, particularly in the manner in which it has been, without apparent oversight from our department or veterinary professionals within the university.
Do you think the uncertainty means that people, firstly, won't bother applying, but secondly, even people who are there are worrying about their future?
I think many of us are concerned, but we've been given assurances, even by the very council that has made this decision, this recommendation, that we will continue our degrees, that all current students will graduate, and that the current cohort applying will also graduate. So the termination is likely, if it goes ahead, only to take place in 2032. But it is a concern, and I hope that if it is overturned, this will only strengthen the university to encourage and improve the veterinary department.
This is only a recommendation to the university's general board, which will make the decision. What do you think your chances are of keeping it open?
I think they're very high. I think the community has been overwhelmingly supportive. Our campaign, which is entitled Save the Vet School, has raised over 15,500 statements, and these are professionals at every level, supporters of the university, students, alumni, government officials, members of parliament, university professionals. They all support us.
Student Rudy Bronyard. Well, the existing department is in an area of Cambridge earmarked for development, and a former head of the vet school, who still works there, Professor James Wood, says the cost of relocating the school has been added to the calculations on its future, which he says is unfair.
I was initially very disappointed, and I felt that the decision had been taken on really quite flaky grounds, and I was not convinced that the financial information that was used as a basis of that decision was up to date, and I felt that the real elephant in the room, which is the value of the estate of, I think, around 25 acres that we are currently sitting on, had not been properly taken into account. And the development that Cambridge University is trying to drive on its West Cambridge campus, where we're based, the West Cambridge campus wants our land, but doesn't want to find the funds to relocate us.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because there was a report on the vet school in 2024 from the Royal College, which demanded a lot of improvements to the school to meet its standards. Now, some of those have been achieved, but you could argue that the university here is just deciding not to invest more in a failing course.
Yeah, the course isn't failing, and actually on the re-inspection, the results are radically improved. Nearly every one of the requirements from 2-3 years ago have been addressed, and those that haven't been fully addressed are well on the way to being fully addressed.
It is very expensive to train vets, and other schools have responded to that in different ways. Bristol, for instance, you can get a qualification as an American vet, which obviously attracts lots of foreign students. Nottingham now has 2 intakes, one in October, one in April. Has Cambridge been too slow to adopt these new approaches?
I think that's probably a reasonable criticism. I think the underlying problem is that the government does not pay universities enough to educate actually either veterinary students or medical students. The university receives less money than they cost to run them, but the veterinary course is probably the most extremely expensive one. So yes, Cambridge has been slow in picking up some of these alternatives, and it's not that they haven't been suggested over the last 5 years.
Let's talk about what you call the elephant in the room, and this is the fact that you are sitting on 25 acres of land which could now be developed.
So this is land that the university's West Cambridge Innovation Campus hopes to develop for a series of other academic and commercial buildings. And actually us being here on the 25 acres is in the way of that. However, it's unfortunate that West Cambridge has only thought about the costs of rebuilding new things where we are, instead of the cost of redeveloping us, and tried to dump those costs onto the other parts of the academic university, which frankly don't have enough money for their own redevelopment and building refurbishment, let alone the rebuilding of a new veterinary school somewhere else around the university grounds.
The university didn't want to give us an interview about this, but they do say that all options were explored in depth and weighed up carefully against the school's strategic vision and plan and their implications for teaching and research. After careful consideration, they go on to say, it was concluded that there was no viable long-term solution.
I would challenge that. I think the figures that they use for the cost of the operations of the veterinary hospital, which is the crux of the challenge here in terms of the cost of the delivery of the course, because we have to run a commercial hospital in order to teach our students in it, their cost models were all driven by a £50 to £60 million additional bill related to the redevelopment of the department somewhere else.
What does it say more widely about the state of vet education here in the UK if Cambridge is thinking about closing its vet school?
Firstly, we are not producing enough vets in this country at the moment. We're still relying on trained vets from overseas in order to fulfil our needs. You combine that with the fact that government does not pay any of the universities enough to run teaching programmes for vets in this country. So we should address that by funding things properly. In the meantime, it's quite possible for the University of Cambridge to have listened to all of the new information and say, no, we should continue to invest and benefit from having a veterinary school in Cambridge.
Professor James Wood, do let us know what you make of that or anything else you hear or think you should hear on the programme. You can tweet us on X, where we are at BBC Farming Today, or drop us an email, farming.today@bbc.co.uk. But that's it from us. I'm Charlotte Smith. The producer is Rebecca Rooney, and Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.